Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be discussing IVF and ethical decisions. As my slides are coming up, there they are. I'll introduce myself in the, I think, fairly unique perspective from which I'll be speaking. I'm an academic. I'm a professor here in Israel. I'm a visiting researcher at Cambridge University. I'm an entrepreneur. I'll talk a little about that. And I work a lot with industry. I'm mentioning all of that because I think we need a holistic approach when we're dealing with medical issues. So granted, I'm not taking the medical perspective at all. That's not my forte, but I am speaking about it from a psychological perspective. And I'll be talking about my misconceptions of the effectiveness of fertility treatments, specifically IVF, and what to do about them from a social and psychological perspective. So that's me with industry and academic experience and with a startup that I have that's called Body and Soul that helps people do many things around personal development, but also manage their medical condition. And that is going to be abundantly clear why I'm mentioning it now, because I'm going to be speaking about women who are having fertility treatments, IVF treatments, at the old age, medically. I'm offending myself because I'm above that age, but of 43 to 45. That's not a great age to be having IVF treatments, and yet people have them. So when we started Body and Soul, we wanted to help people deal with various issues. One of them was managing their medical condition, which is something that's thrust upon more and more individuals. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes they lack the tools to actually do it. So in our medical community, we have tools for self-management, and one of them is do your math. Okay, am I insulting people when I'm saying that? I don't think so, because I'm helping them understand what are the risks and what are the benefits, what are the numbers and what do they mean around their medical conditions, the treatment they're having, the fertility treatment they're having, the cancer treatment they're having. What are the odds that it will actually work? We're putting hope aside for a moment. We're looking at the math, and then you can attach the emotional value that you want to whatever numbers you come up with. So that's what I do in Body and Soul. And yet sometimes people don't understand the odds. I know that because I did a lot of research about that. I'll bounce through a bunch of slides around cancer treatment to show you that people don't really understand information about breast cancer. And the less they understand about it, the higher their hopes about it. For example, they believe that a test will tell them with certainty what to do if they have breast cancer. It's not going to happen. They believe that a test will tell them with certainty whether or not they will develop breast cancer. The test will not do that. And yet when they endorse these false beliefs, they're more keen on having the test. They're more worried about the screening, and they are willing to pay more money about the screening, which they think will give them something, a type of certainty that indeed they cannot have. That's micro-tragedy number one. Actually, the second one isn't really a tragedy, but it's an interesting point from the perspective of behavioral economics, and I did train with Daniel Kahneman at Princeton University, so if you know anything about behavioral economics, you know that you can anchor people with a number. And in Israel, as well as in other countries, amniocentesis is funded at the age of 35, which means by public thought that it's mandatory. It is not mandatory, but it's funded. If I say that to an Israeli audience, people start screaming at me, and they get very angry because obviously they think I'm wrong and that I want to deprive women of amniocentesis. I have no stake in the matter whatsoever. What I am saying, though, is that when you look at the decisions by women who are above the age of 35 and ask them, why did you have amniocentesis? They'll say, because of the age. But what about the age? I don't know. There's an age, there's a number, there's an anchor. And it's strong. So what have we learned so far? That probabilities are hard to comprehend. And that's pretty painful when we talk about the probability of having a baby or developing breast cancer. We've also learned that the way you present information influences comprehension. That emotion plays a big role, and we'll get there even more in a second. And so does information about what you should do and presumably what is the norm, what is the right thing to do. And now we're getting to fertility treatments. Let's look at this cute baby. That's probably the only sweet thing we're going to look at today. I'm sorry. Not because I'm a pessimist or a mean person, just because the reality isn't very pretty. And actually, I'm giving this talk in the hope of helping women, not hurting them, because I think women don't want fertility treatments. That's not their end goal. Their end goal is this beautiful, sweet, adorable little creature. That's what they're after. So when we look at fertility treatments, we see that in countries other than Israel, which we'll get to in a minute, a lot of IVF treatments take place in 4 cycles. That's it. In women in Israel, there are many fertility treatments above the age of 43, up until the age of 45, because the government funds that. So if you remember what I said about amniocentesis, women interpret funding as it's a good idea or it's mandatory. In the US, it's funded up to 4 cycles by various insurance companies, seldom beyond. In Israel, go ahead until you have 2 children. You can have as many cycles as you want. And Israel is unique. If you look at data from England, they don't even have data on women above the age of 40, of 42. They just don't do IVF treatments there enough to grant them admission into the graph. But in Israel, we do. Likewise, that's more data from England, and you see the numbers are very, very small for having cycles beyond the 4th one. Not so in Israel. So in Israel, we have 23% of women trying to get pregnant with their own eggs between the age of 40 and 42. Their percentage in IVF is 23%. That's a lot. Women age 43 up to 45 are 12.7% of IVF treatments. Again, that is quite a lot, and their chance of getting pregnant is, if you're really, really, really optimistic, it's 15%. Okay, this is what got me a grant on what in Hebrew was called futile doing, and in English had a more polite name, but Israelis are very blunt, so that was the topic in Hebrew. And we examined why are people doing that. We looked at women age 43 to 45 and asked, why are they doing this? Maybe they don't have information about their chances. Maybe they don't care about their chances. Maybe they were misinformed. What is going on here? So we asked about 90 women, again with a sweet baby, and now we're moving to the Kotel, to the Wailing Wall, because this is a study that took place mostly in Jerusalem. We asked these women what was happening and how much information they had received. And the Wailing Wall is a place of hopes, and it's snowing there, and snow is rare, even in Jerusalem, and getting pregnant with IVF between the age of 43 and 45 is also pretty rare. So we asked them about their education, and half of them are married, and half of them have kids. And we asked them how many IVF cycles have they already had. On average, it's almost 5. That's a lot. That means the chances of the incremental additional cycles are very low. And then we ask, what did the doctors say? So some of them don't answer, which is weird, because either the doctor didn't say anything, or they wanted to forget, or they say, very small chance, or they say a verbal explanation, but it's slow. So they are getting the right information. They are not being misled. What we ask them about is, what do you think are the chances that you'll have a baby following this treatment cycle? And they say something like, the animation isn't coming up, but if I said for the entire cycles, it's between 5 and 15, they're saying something around 50%. 50. That is incredibly unrealistic. And yet this is the case. And yet this is what they're going for. And when we ask them, is there a number, a cutoff point where you would stop trying? 80% of them say, I would try regardless of the odds. So this is an ethics conference. I am out of my comfort zone because I'm a scientist. I'm a decision scientist. I'm an empiricist. I don't know what is morally right or wrong. What I do know is that these women have a very inaccurate assessment of their risks and their chances. I also know that they do not have a stopping rule. And I know that whether or not the doctor said anything doesn't make a difference. I also know that they say things like, I prefer not to know, or luckily I don't believe in statistics. Which is interesting, because I didn't think statistics required any faith, but who knew? How much money did they spend on it? About 24,000 shekels. It's about 6,000 euros. The treatments are free, but they're always more expensive. What do I propose? What do I think could be helpful to these women, given that they don't have a plan, and they don't have a stopping rule, and they haven't determined how many cycles they'll do or how much money they'll spend? They're just going on and doing their best and really hoping to have a baby, which I can totally understand and sympathize with, but they are most likely not getting there. And the cost is very high financially to them, financially to the entire medical establishment, to the country, and also emotionally, because it's not fun having failed IVF treatments. Add to that the fact that they don't even want to think about egg donation. What do I propose? And here I'm showing that they either don't know or don't wish to have egg donation. The rational decision-making process would involve someone determining their odds, their risks, and making a decision. I don't know if that's going to happen, and I don't know if we have the right, as I said, I am not an ethicist, to decide for these women. What I do think, and it's coming from decision science, is I think it is ethically sound and possibly helpful to propose a nudge. Instead of having these women go on this train of IVF that doesn't stop, to make it mandatory for them and their physicians to have a discussion after 3 cycles, after 4 cycles, to reevaluate. What are your chances? How are you feeling? Have you considered alternatives? Let's talk about this before we just continue without further thinking and probably without reaching to the stop where we want to go. Finally, I mentioned Body and Soul and the work we do there, and I mentioned the work we do around understanding the numbers. There is other work that we do, which the doctors try to do or are forced to do. One of my colleagues, who's a gynecologist and a fertility expert, said, I do mourning counseling. I help people with their bereavement process around their lost fertility. What we do at Body and Soul is we help people process their emotions around their medical condition, something which, for the most part, nobody does, and here we are offering it to them in a nutshell, the convenience of their own home, hopefully in a way that then informs their decision or at least alleviates the pain. I leave you with these thoughts, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Thank you very much.